Well, I'm going to sound a bit cynical. And I'm using the microphone because I've been giving it, so it sounds a bit really loud now. Schools are under such pressure.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what sector, and if we do a lot of work in mental health work, the place to be, etc., or whatever way you want to slice social problems, people pretty quickly look to schools to be quite a key solution to that, which is understandable and right, because we're a universal statutory service, so we have, apart from home educators, we have the entire population. So it's right that we should be taking that responsibility. The challenge is that the demands that are placed on schools and the accountability and the stakes around the accountability are so punishing that I'm afraid schools and school leaders, although they come into the profession because they believe in children and they believe in potential and they believe in opportunity, and they, generally speaking, believe in a holistic approach to an individual child and not a number in a box, are so heavily incentivised to push and to chase one micro sector of what a child's achievement is, namely GCSE results in secondary sector or SATs in primary, that the incentives, I'm afraid, define the behaviour of school leaders very, very heavily. And there is not much to incentivise school leaders to be really active.
So do you need something to happen from Department of Education? Do you need the kind of Ofsted goals rewritten in order to prioritise health as well as GCSE results?
Well, it needs more than that. I mean, yes, I think a rebalancing of what Ofsted looks for is right, but actually it's a bigger problem, because really Ofsted is part of the problem in my view, in that the stakes around Ofsted are so high that you can put it in and then people would do it. But the difficulty is that it just becomes additional to another thing, and that the school system is already kind of creaking. So that also then links into being a funding issue, which is, it's great to say, yes, schools have to be really serious about doing some of this work, but you've got to then, there's got to be the resource. And it's partly about money, but it's also partly about expertise. And going back to David's input, we're not behavioural scientists, we're teachers, and our instinct is to do your very first thing, which doesn't necessarily work very well in relation to food, which is to teach children and families, about healthy eating and healthy choices, but isn't necessarily the right way. So we can change what we do, we can model it, we can change the food that we offer, and I think all the work on the food standards and so on, I mean, that was all going, in my view, in a very good direction. And the difficulty is it just lost momentum. Yeah. So if this is an opportunity to rekindle some of that, the work on the actual what we're serving in foods is a pretty good place to start.
Thank you very much. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I do think so many of these debates, and David made it clear, we all throw it back to, we need more education. That's all that's needed, we just teach them how to do it. And we know it doesn't work. But Tim, we do know that when we walk into stores, certain foods are right up there. So what's Tesco going to do?
Good morning, everybody.
By the way, for coming into this, I understand.
I wasn't feeling any hostility until just then. Quite normal. So the first thing to say is that we know we share a responsibility with lots of others, and I'll come back, if I may, to the subject of collaboration. Why should a retailer need to do this? Well, it is about doing the right thing, number one. But number two, 2/3 of our shoppers now want us to help them to lead healthier lives. And what retailers are pretty good at, frankly, is responding to that kind of challenge. That leadership, I think, is really important for us as the largest UK retailer. And you have to take some risks. And some of the things that David and the Behavioural Insight Unit talked about years ago, we've actually got on and done to try and make that work. And so you've noticed, if you shop in Tesco, that for quite a number of years we don't have sweets on our checkouts anymore, because that last little bit of the shopping trip where that temptation would be too great. And in response to a very simple thought that not enough kids were eating fruit and veg, we decided to give fruit away in our stores. And so far, I think we've given away 35 million pieces of fruit to parents who have got their kids with them and might not otherwise be getting as many of their 5 a day as we'd all like. So that bit of leadership, which has a direct cost to it, it is with the expectation, I think, that others will follow, and sometimes they do, and too often they don't. And again, I will come back to the subject of collaboration. It also means that if the Treasury call you in and say, hey, we've got this great idea for a sugar tax, that we're ready to act quickly. And I'm grateful for David for putting up the slides that showed what had actually happened. So the brief was, this is where we're going to draw the line. And we went back to the office and said, I think we could probably change 100 and something 50 products, 47 recipes, 4 suppliers in about a year. And we challenged our 4 suppliers and they did it in 6 months. And only one of those products that Tesco then sold with more than the sugar tax amount in it was a problem in the end. And what the government liked about that was not that we'd done it quickly, although they liked that, but what they liked was it was really proving to others, this is leadership, that it was possible. So if you're working for Coke or Pepsi, sorry, we've proved it's possible. And nobody noticed. And to David's point, the label changed. We said, tiny letters, new recipe. Nobody noticed. Sales continued to do what they were doing. So that leadership's really important. The second bit, though, is that, and this is where you have to be a bit reluctant if you're a retailer to say this out loud, but I'm partially a retailer now, and that is that you have to persuade others to do the same in the same places. So we're trying to get an initiative off the ground at the moment, which is a collaboration between all of the retailers who belong to an organisation called the Consumer Goods Forum. 400 companies around the world, 36 of them very, very active, including that Tesco, Sainsbury, M&S in this country, and others, in order that we will determine for once and for all, hopefully, what really works in trying to help our customers to do what they want to do, which is to lead healthier lives. So some of those initiatives would be, for example, free fruit for kids. We'd also have healthier products, which would be badged as not that. So our version of that is called Wicked Kitchen. Great products, great product development. We'd all sign up to product development pledges. The one that Tesco has is that every product we develop this year will be healthier than the one it replaces, or it won't, and taste better, or it won't make it to the shelf. So those kind of things where you offer a collaborative approach and then you kind of put the flag up and say, who wants to join? Well, hopefully most people will. And that will then extend in trials to probably hundreds of thousands of people initially. So, it has to work at that sort of level. So our goal is to provide the leadership, but to hope that others join us.
It's so complex, and we all know that. And there's many sort of people in the room today that are doing incredible things. And I think what St. Thomas's gives us the opportunity to use to other powers really is that old thing of prove it, data, show me. And governments who I've worked with a few over the years since School Dinners campaign, they just say make me and show me. And certainly when we both sat around the table last, which is in the Cameron government, and the first childhood obesity strategy, which was looking really good. It was about being best of category in all of our thinking. It was looking good. I think that the plan was always to get it great, and that was always going to happen in the last month, getting stuff over the line. And really it was about creating a moment of national pride. But I think, to try and answer your question, first of all, most newspapers don't employ nutritionists, and they're very responsible for giving out a lot of the wrong information. So this is actually a technical problem, okay? And it can help make things worse. So that has to be addressed. Secondly, we've had no real leadership, whether it's going through 9 education secretaries in 13 years, which is where I started in school dinners. Until recently, I've smelt nothing about. Only in the latest, seeing the NHS number on the bus. But in all the elections that we've had, health has never been. Child health, protecting child health, has never had a currency within the vote, and that has to change. And I know we're all in a pickle at the moment, but actually, I do see light. I do see optimism. I think that this project, which is an environmental task force, it lays the foundations for real positive change. Often, everything from communications and newspapers likes a winner or a failure, or on or off, or light or shade. And of course, the real gains to be made in child health are small movements everywhere. And often we focus on, getting good to great, but actually terrible to good is such a trophy to be had and to be savoured. And I think we've heard that with yourself today. And I think anyone that's worked in primary schools, which largely British primary schools, are such incredible places, and of course secondary gets more complicated for lots of obvious reasons. I'm living that as well. But there's so many wins to be made from pregnancy to primary school age kids, and this will be the generation that teaches their parents about food and life and the environment. And I think what I'm trying to say, there's so much that you can say, and it's such a position for all of us to come together as a team. Often we're very proud of the works that we've done, but I think unity, and I think this moment, this project is really trying to, the team spirit is much more valuable to us than any singular work. I think we need strong leadership. Yes, from the triangle of the home to the high street to the government, it is the responsibility of clear leadership at government to set the tone, build the foundations, and give us the pillars. Absolutely, those fair playing fields, that blend of legislation, education, and collaboration with business, the carrot and the stick is very important. Yep. I can't tell you, we sort of slightly, just as the sugary drinks tax, which is often, and I'm apolitical, so please don't get me, but I think, often we can go to sort of Tory nanny state sort of conversations. They were saying that 13 years ago when there were standards for dog food in child food and not in child's food in primary schools 190 days a year. So I think the concept or the rhetoric around nanny state is almost as old-fashioned as the Second Amendment. It's not fit for purpose. Kids need to be loved and nurtured and nannied really, really well. I think the sugary drinks tax could be £1 billion of new money into education, into breakfast clubs and sport. When did you last hear that? When did you last hear that? It is new money. It's not robbed from Peter to pay Paul. I think in the last weeks, the narrative, although a small one, I think it's more symbolic and emotional, and was the little 7 minutes of TV that I did around energy drinks. And is it right to serve energy drinks to kids? And every major retailer, Tesco's, all of them, Shell, and we're now looking at Odeon, I think they've come into the fray, they're all saying that we won't do this now. But they're also wanting us to get government to legislate because the independents are not following suit. So I think the blend of legislation and collaboration and vision and a moment of pride and a moment that we're in it together is there. It would have been better to start in the Olympics. It would have. And we've had all the data since the turn of the millennia. And people like Tam Fry is kind of, waiting for us to really... This is old news, but as you know, people don't like change until the pain of not changing is worse than change. So I do think that this, I hope and I pray, actually, that they're in the pickle that we're in politically, that I would love to see child health put across every single department of government. And I believe if we do that, and I believe if it's about national pride and strategy, we randomly got into this pickle. We cannot randomly get out of it.
No.
So I think that we have opportunity, and I think today is about proof and measurement and hopefully people coming together to sort of, because there's so many nuances, but I think the concept of normality, right and wrong, and I think the concept in nanny state terms of choice, we think we have choice. I don't want, other than hydrogenated fats, I want to take nothing away from you at all. But I do think choice is about choice. If you can only buy crap, you only
And
eat
that's what
crap.
you eat.
And if only crap is discounted and bogged off, that's what you tend to sway to. And so from food banks to the middle classes, I think, we should really debate the concept of choice, whether it's the amount of calories in vending, petrol stations, supermarkets, restaurants, grab and go. I think we can structure it and we can give choice. And even that will take us halfway there, I think.
Well, first of all, just to say, I think the Bitesize report and the collaboration that we're starting here in Lambeth and Southwark is fantastic, because what we've lacked, I think, is doing things at scale, sustaining those activities and using all of our assets effectively. And I think the Bitesize report, the partnership that we've been creating over the past few years and now enhancing, will help us to move in that direction. So I've had the unique experience of working both in Public Health England as well as in the London Borough of Southwark over the last 5 years. And I think there's some key lessons that I'm learning about the role of both national and local government in this. And there are 4 key principles. The first is do what you can uniquely do and do it well. Second, it's about working effectively in partnerships and ensuring that those partnerships are coordinated and governed and held to account. Third, it's about doing things at scale. There are too many little initiatives, too many good ideas, which are never ever brought to scale, and therefore we never ever yield the sort of population health impact that we need. And then fourthly, a principle of sustainability. Again, have the good ideas, have the innovation, but for goodness sake, let's not have that project run for 3 years and then peter out, or 5 years and then peter out. The reality is the childhood obesity epidemic did not start yesterday. It started 20, 30 years ago, as we began as a nation to change the way we eat, the way things are marketed to us, and the food environment began changing. It is not going to change in 3 years. And that's something I think that, whether you're working nationally or locally, those are some core principles that we need to put in place. So I think working in Southwark has really been a fantastic eye-opener for me, because it has given a chance for me to really understand the power of local leadership against those 4 principles. So local government is really well placed to do some unique things. Fantastic political leadership, amazing engagement with local communities, amazing ability to work across the council to look at not only health in all policies, but how about childhood obesity in all policies, so that we can work with education, with parks and leisure, with culture, with planning and regeneration, as we're doing in Southwark, to begin thinking about how we use all of the assets within our council to ensure that we're doing things differently. And that concept of scale is really important as well. Some of you may be aware of the Go Fizz Free campaign that we've had in Southwark, that we've been running in February, the Fizz Free Feb. And through that campaign, we've engaged more than 400,000 people with more than 100,000 accounts engaged in this. And this is a campaign run over 1 month to look at getting people to reduce their soda and pop intake. So again, this is an example of local innovation in local government and things that we can uniquely do at scale. Southwark also has a free swim and gym program. We've rolled out healthy free school meals programs for all primary school children. These are major interventions which help us to get that scale which is needed, and there's a commitment for sustainability as well. I think moving forward, we now need to move from the general and that sort of wide scale to ensure that we are also targeting those in greatest need. And I think that's where local government can also do that as well.
So can I just play devil's advocate slightly, because I think that what Liz said about schools, Ofsted asks the world of them and doesn't give you more financial backing. In my dealings with councils, they are also asked for the earth and the sky, and there are pressures coming from, whether it's Meals on Wheels or wherever these pressures are coming from. They're all coming out of the same budgets. I mean, it's brilliant what you're doing in Southwark, but I have seen lots of instances where people will talk a good story and say, yeah, of course we want really healthy kids and we want to do all these things, and actually it isn't there on the priority because it's not mandated and because it's not funded.
So I think what we need to do is to think about how we work across the system to ensure that we recognize that there is variation in local authorities, and that's the nature of public health and well-being in local authorities. But we ensure that we're looking at opportunities for raising all boats as we work in this area. So there's some fantastic collaborations now across London where directors of public health are working together in a far more concerted way to share best practices, to share tools, to avoid duplication of effort. So we're doing things once and then helping to do that at scale. We're also working across London, for example. I'm using London because I'm here now, to think about innovation, and innovation such as what we're doing with the charity and how we can disseminate that learning far more quickly than we have done in the past. And then finally, remember the power of political leadership. And I think the fact that we now have a mayor that is making childhood obesity a priority, that is setting up a task force to look at childhood obesity, and hopefully we'll be able to look at supporting innovative ideas and bringing them to scale in the city, is fantastic. So I think we have some great opportunities ahead, and I think the challenge is, how do we take full advantage of all of the opportunities which are coming up in the near future?
We're trying to pick up on the point that Kevin was talking about there, of do what you can uniquely do.
Sorry?
So do what you can uniquely do. So we're a charitable funder, and we can focus on the long term. So we've been around for 500 years, so it feels to us that it's probably worth spending 10 or 20 years looking at childhood obesity. Now, we can take that sort of long-term frame in a way that lots of other people can't because of political cycles and the like. Secondly, what we're really focusing on is that we work in Lambeth and Southwark with the intent to test and explore ideas. Now, a lot of the changes I think we're talking about are really difficult to do at the national level, and we know that. What we might be able to do in Lambeth and Southwark is to get some sort of simulation of those types of whole systems changes that we all talk about, and actually work with specific neighbourhoods to see if we can do lots of different things at the same time, to see if cumulatively they add up to more than the sum of their parts. And that's really tricky to do. I guess the third thing is that it's quite easy to approach this very top-down and talk about what we should be doing, kind of societal level. One of our major principles or philosophies is to the point that Vicky was talking about, that those interventions that will be most successful will be co-designed, will be shaped by the communities in which they're happening. So the sort of work we're trying to do is picking out in those three different areas. So thinking about what you can do in the school, what you can do in the homes and in the street. But kind of, I guess, the philosophy behind it is, let's do, to David's point, let's try stuff, let's experiment, let's test it, let's see if we can get the data that can really inform broader decisions than our own on it.
And what would you like to see the government doing?
Other people here will kind of be able to push more to that. It looks to me that where the government has started focusing on kind of food formulation is important, but everything that we're talking about, everything that this report says, is that that's really just a part of it. So it's speaking to how do we get childhood obesity or health in all policies, and how do we look in kind of the non-obvious directions? So, hey, just one thing that was shared with me the other day is that local government pensions collectively are some of the biggest pensions anywhere in the world. Local government has a public health responsibility. Yep. So how can we work with local government pensions and thinking about how they engage with investors and food companies and the like in terms of thinking about food products?
I think there's two things I'd start with. And the first is that the political framework that we all want, we haven't got, and it doesn't look like we're going to get it, which is that you join up all of the departments who need to be joined up and have a 25-year food and farming plan. Farmers think in 25-year cycles, generations, and we are thinking about solutions for what has become a problem in my lifetime, and it will take us a while to get there. But it would be more helpful if any government, and I have no political allegiance to declare at this moment, but if any government was able to sort of be coherent on all of the aspects that we're all representing. The second is that the shared responsibility I talked about for retailers doesn't extend, obviously, to the high street and where people choose to buy the rest of their food from. And Jamie probably will remember, I certainly do, when I was running the Food Standards Agency, the problem that we faced in reducing salt, which was a significant one, was retailers started to slow down their activities because the fast food sector, restaurants generally did not follow. And they didn't because it was helping their sales. Yeah. So that there needed to be some edge to that. And we found it and we implemented it. And well done, everybody, for reducing salt content. However, what we've learnt about that for the collaborative approach that we need in thinking about this Consumer Goods Forum initiative is that it will only work if we can get momentum behind all the sources of food. So, we've got fantastic street markets selling fruit and veg, and they've always been there. So how do we as retailers help our shoppers determine where the best choices are going to be made without kind of nannying and using kind of the behavioural insight nudging towards those outcomes? We don't know. But what we do know is that the environments that we present to our shoppers will be able to help. So by providing better quality fruit and veg at the right price, that kind of incentivises people to do the right thing. We are not supposed to talk about price and promotion, but I guarantee that for the exercise that we're thinking of with our retailer competitors and our kind of into the fringes at least of the quick service restaurant market, we're going to need to. Because one of the things we all know is that price is a key determinant, and I'm trying not to look at David in case he's going to tell me I'm wrong. But all the things that we shouldn't do, we do know that price makes a big difference. So when we've just run 2 health months in our stores, we have found that by offering people healthy swaps and promoting those and giving the healthier versions, although we don't call them that, at a lower price, guess what? People's baskets get healthier. So we're kind of beginning to tip towards that point. And the only thing I've got in my mind thinking about the future is how do we then extend that to the broader high street?
This is why wonderful leadership is cultural. We've heard a lot. We've seen great leadership in our head teacher today. So just by being with her that the whole school gets it, right? You can't bottle that, right? So we need leadership from the top that has a vision and aspiration so that others, local, national, can flourish and come up with great ideas. You need structure there to deliver the obvious stuff. Reformulation is deeply powerful, but it's obvious. To answer the other lady's question, like how bad does bad get, and how does one address really bad, and where do we want bad to get to? So when you're looking at things like holiday hunger in schools, when those kids that the means-tested families and the others that don't get the hot meal have nothing, how do we have budgets and crack teams that can address the nuance of that locally? And I think so. There is, what's interesting about this is, I hope there's money in the funding of this that doesn't have anywhere to go yet, because there's really important places that need to be addressed, because the sharp end of how bad it's got is very expensive socially and financially. And I think, again, we need to see that there is currency and value in UK Limited for being fitter and healthier and brighter. And if there's any alignment with strong and stable, it has to be at this level. So I think when you talk to Mark Carney at the Bank of England, if you talk to very clever economists in Cambridge and Oxford, they have the capacity to model what healthier, more productive companies, schools, cities, towns looks like. Less absenteeism, more achievements at school. So I think, it does require a moment of a different way of thinking about things. And I think when you start, it is a bit of a moment like smoking, I think. I remember changing that 2 years before the law, and customers would attack me. How dare you put me out here, treat me like this? Of course, it becomes the norm, and now our kids couldn't even fathom being on an aeroplane or a tube or this or the other. I think, we have got a great new mayor, but is he really pulling all the levers that he could? No. Because he's got more advertising space than anyone else I know. And we could be doing daily hacks. We could, when it goes digital, we could change that when the kids go back from school.
Yep.
We could be giving them hacks and shortcuts. The amount of latch door kids, 75% of kids under 13 years are coming home to empty homes. What are they cooking? So I think that there's just new, clever ways to look at things. And I think morality and righteousness, but also, I think even the concept around businesses, like doing good should be good business.
Yeah.
And I think it's when you can go into a business and say, and if you're looking after, often we've looked at kids and schools, if you're looking at factories and call centres where they get fed, or factories where they're running 24 hours a day, how are you feeding them? What does good vending look like? How are you taking care of mummy and daddy? Because happy kids need healthy mummy and daddies, right? So I do think that the concept of currency around health can set the tone for everyone having great ideas.
Honestly, I think the first barrier from school leaders is just headspace and priority, because they're under such pressure to deliver on other things. Is that enough? I mean, yeah.
And how do you convince them? You must have the same pressures, and obviously you've done lots of brilliant stuff in your school. Is there something that you say to them that they can do, that they can still do within those competing priorities?
Yeah, I mean, I guess partly I'd say it's about energy, and I love the notion of leadership and the moment and what's on the agenda, and it just was on the agenda, back with the food standards and all your work and all the rest of it, and huge credit, and it has just gone off the agenda. So I guess motivation and what drives people is quite subtle and complex, isn't it? And I think there has, particularly in Southwark, it's been quite a turnover of heads in the last 10 years. So quite a lot of them are new heads who are coming into the world as it is now, not sort of with any of the legacy of some of this work. And so I guess it's about priority and awareness. And Kevin's point that Southwark funds free school meals, healthy school meals for all students, so that regardless of whether they're free school meals or not. And probably on some level, people feel they're ticking the box because of doing that.
The main barrier that certainly we felt as the charity is we said that we want to do this 10-year programme, and people are going, great, well, good luck. And even further than that, we've said that we want to reduce the deprivation gap in Lambeth and Southwark. So basically get childhood obesity rates in poorer areas the same levels as childhood obesity rates in the richer areas. So that's not about making the kids in the richer areas fatter. It's about trying to reduce obesity overall. And then people say, oh, well, really, really good luck with that. But my sense is that, to David's point, is that actually all the evidence suggests that this is an entirely crackable problem. It's difficult, but an entirely crackable problem. But there's a puzzler that we've been left with, and I'll leave with the room. And it's some great work that the Frameworks Institute have, and Nikki here, has done for us, which is, hey, my forward in this starts off with about childhood obesity being a health epidemic. It's a crisis. We need to resolve this, and absolutely we do. But what seems to happen that when we use that language, it suggests to people that we can't fix this. It's out of all of our collective ability to do that. Which I guess is to say that a lot of the time we get caught in audiences like this, where we talk about the messages that work for us as an audience rather than those that potentially we're trying to work with. So I think as a puzzler for all of us in this space, we recognise that this is an epidemic, but somehow the language we're using might be putting people off or feeling that they themselves can resolve it.
Can I say as well that the prize for getting this right as a unique, exciting island is phenomenal.
Huge.
When I was at the World Health Organization in front of 156 heads of health, and we had a panel, and I said, because it just came out, that George Osborne had announced a sugary drinks tax, there was a standing ovation because they're all fatigued by nothing. They're all fatigued. So this is a moment for, I come in, new rules, we're all in it together, everyone's going to take a tiny bit of pain, but the benefits are absolutely, paramount. We absolutely have to, and I think what's interesting is, we've got government here today, we've got new advisors that, to me, seem like good humans and bright and intelligent and fit for purpose. We need to get Mrs. May to make Chapter 2 robust, rules of the game. Right? The nuance, the locality, people, all the little, charities, they can be creative and agile and do all the stuff to address, but we need rules of the game. Even from the Tesco supermarket side, there's many things they want to make it a fair playing field. Yep. There's no point in being big and better if, the small businesses are laggarding and compromising in many different ways. So I do think the prize, and I do believe it has commerce and money behind it for Britain to show that we can do this, is massive.